All right, welcome back everybody to a brand new video here on the second channel, and today I've got my Atlanta Regionals tier list. We're going to be talking about what I think are the best decks for the tournament, where decks are right now heading into this weekend. Of course, it is going to be the first major post-rotation tournament. Things are going to get interesting. We are going to see a lot of really cool meta developments and stuff, I think, and I'm really excited for Atlanta. There could be more decks you could add to this tier list. This is like the most the most common decks in the meta right now, and the ones you probably have to expect to see the most this weekend. But I'm really excited for Atlanta, and I am going to be competing, and I cannot wait to see what does well this weekend. If y'all are new here to the channel, make sure to subscribe down below. We're on the road to 23,000 subs, and I'll leave a link to the tier list down below if you want to go try it for yourself. Let me know if I maybe could have ranked decks better. I don't know. I'm always interested to hear that. But anyways, let's get into the tier list here. Starting off with the BDIF, in my opinion, the Terrabox deck. We'll put it in S tier. I actually don't think Terrabox is an S tier deck. Like, there actually isn't an S tier deck in this format. And maybe that kind of bumps it down to A tier because, I mean, truth be told, we are in a meta where there's so many different, developments. There's all kinds of new ways to play decks popping up every now and then. So I actually really don't think there's a deck in S tier at the moment. I do think that the strongest deck in the format is the Terrabox deck, but I don't think it's S tier. I think that it's going to be very common and popular this weekend, and we'll talk more about that in a future video here on the second channel on my meta predictions. But for now, I do have Terrabox in the A tier. It is probably the deck to beat this weekend, but I don't think the deck is quite S tier. It's actually already been found out to be pretty exploitable, which is obviously not a good sign for the deck going forward. But for now, we'll pop it in the A tier, top of A tier even, as the best deck. Then we got the Archaladon decks. So we have Archaladon Double, which I'll put in B tier. Poison Archaladon I'll put in B tier. And then Hops Zacian Archaladon we'll put in B tier. I know, throwing all the Archaladons in B tier is, kind of a meme. It's like, what's the point of having all these different Archaladon decks when they're all in B tier? But I think that all of them have their own strengths and weaknesses. I think that Archaladon with Zacian is pretty solid. I've been seeing, just a straightforward approach to Archaladon, play the Zacian. Also, using N's Zoroark has also been something that has popped up recently, popularized by Gabriel Fernandez, arguably, the best player in the game right now, debatably. So there definitely is room for Archaladon to grow because there's so many different ways to play it. The Poison package is also pretty popular and decent too. It's really hard to gauge what is the best build of Archaladon right now because there's all these different variants of the deck running around. But I do think if you're playing Archaladon, I think at the very least you have yourself a decent B tier deck, unless you're playing something weird like Archaladon Dragapult. But Archaladon definitely is, in my opinion, a solid B tier deck right now. It's not the greatest deck ever, and it still suffers from consistency issues, but it's very strong and straightforward archetype, which is really all you need right now in this meta, in my opinion. So that's why I have Archaladon in the B tier. Top of B tier, probably, if I'm going to be honest with you. We got Gholdengo next. The most common way the Gholdengo deck's being played is with the Dunsparce. I'll put that in B tier too. Gholdengo is a very strong deck with a lot of good matchups. However, it does suffer from some inconsistencies. The deck is a little bit more clunkier now because of the loss of Pokestop Greninja. And the other issue I have with Gholdengo, it does not have a good Terrabox matchup. As somebody who wants to play Gholdengo to Atlanta, I can't figure out for the life of me how to fix that Terrabox matchup. The matchup is really bad. It's by far Gholdengo's worst matchup. Terrabox is a really difficult matchup. Also, depending on how your Gholdengo deck is designed, you do suffer versus random Cornerstone Ogerpons, which is another big issue that the deck does face. If your opponent is playing a Cornerstone Ogerpon deck, you could suffer pretty badly. Even having the Dunsparce EX is not the perfect solution to Cornerstone Ogerpon. I think Gholdengo is a pretty good B tier deck, though. I think it is one of the better B-tier decks. It's definitely a very strong archetype with a lot of good matchups. And again, the most common way the deck's being played right now, at least in online tournaments, is the Dunsparce version of the deck, which could be the best way to play it. Could be the optimal way to play Gholdengo. We'll have to see on that one. Next up is Dragapult Gholdengo. I'm going to put that in C tier. Look, Gholdengo's good, and I think that all variants of Gholdengo are at least strong enough to be above D tier, but I think Dragapult Gholdengo is the worst version of Gholdengo right now that's being played. My issue with the deck is it's extremely clunky and bricky. I've tested the deck myself. I brought it to a tournament, and I did not like it at all. It's very inconsistent. It's very bricky. It doesn't really do what Gholdengo is supposed to do. Yes, the Dragapult is nice to have in the deck because it gives you an answer to Cornerstone. It's a pretty good attacker, but it's also very inconsistent with attacking because you do have to crisp into it. And I don't know, the deck just feels like a very weird pile of a deck. And I'm not a fan of the deck personally. I think it's the weakest way to play Gholdengo right now. Out of all the different variants of Gholdengo, I just don't think Dragapult Gholdengo is quite it right now. In my opinion, I'm not a fan of the deck. I don't think it's very good, and I don't think Gholdengo Dragapult is any better than just playing it with Dunsparce or with any other engine like Scizor or something, right? So yeah, I'm not a fan of the deck personally. Next up is Froslass. C tier. I think there is potential for Froslass. Like, if there's going to be a time where Froslass probably sees play, I think right now is definitely not a bad time to play it. The deck has some potential with all the spread damage you can do. A lot of decks right now do get punished for how they've been built with all their abilities. Like, Terrabox, for example, doesn't seem like the worst matchup for this deck. It really depends on how you're building your Froslass deck. We've seen different variations of the deck floating around. With the Espathra build, there's, just a straightforward Monkey Buddy build, which has been the more, common way I've seen Froslass seen play. I don't know. If you're somebody who likes Froslass, if you want to play to Atlanta, it's really not the worst deck to play. I don't think it's any better than the other single price deck options we have right now. It's certainly not a bad deck, though, and I think C tier is like a fine place to put it. Next up is Gardy. Oddly enough, Gardy's another B tier deck. I actually really like Gardevoir right now. It's a very powerful deck that can be very hard to beat if they get turn 2 Drifloon, or at least if they Drifloon you and you can't respond to the Drifloon as easily. Basically, if your deck does not play Jamming Tower, I think Gardevoir is a bad matchup. It's a very powerful archetype that definitely is weaker than it was before, and it's not as skill expressive. It's honestly just like a big beat stick deck, to be honest with you, the way it's played. You can kind of lean into Gardevoir, Monkey Dory spread combos, but for the most part, you're just kind of a Drifloon beat stick deck now. At the very least, at least for my testing, you're Drifloon beat stick deck. But it's a pretty good B tier deck. If you're playing against a deck with no Jamming Tower or Vengeful Punch, the deck's pretty broken, and I think that it's a good pick for B tier. It is one of those decks, though, where as soon as decks start playing Jamming Tower, the deck completely falls off. Next up is Flareon box. Look, I haven't put much time into the deck yet. I haven't tried it yet. I think it is really cool, and I do want to try it. And maybe by the time this video goes out, actually, I might have already played it, because I have to pre-record a ton of content for this week when I'm away. So there's a world where Flareon could be a B-tier deck, but we haven't really seen it perform well in online tournaments yet. For now, I'm going to put it in C-tier. I think it has potential, and I hope after Atlanta this can be a B-tier deck. I have hope that Flareon box can do better. It seems like a pretty powerful archetype that has some really cool tricks and stuff. It might just be a worse Terra box deck. That's maybe the issue with Flareon, is it might just be worse than just flat out playing Terra box itself. It is a really cool archetype, and I really want Flareon to do well. Next up are Dragapult decks. Another deck I would put in A tier is easily Dragapult. Is it better than the Terra box deck, though, is the question. I think both decks are very powerful and are by far the strongest decks in the format right now, but I don't know which one I would say is better. Terra box has more advantages of skill expression with all the different plays it can make. Dragapult is also a very skill expressive heavy deck, but Dragapult has more of a target on its back right now, in my opinion. Also, it's a bit weaker in general compared to Terra box, which has a higher power level than Dragapult does. I think it's still both, they're both A-tier decks. I think the two top decks right now are just probably Dragapult and Terra box. So yeah, I think Dragapult still belongs in the A-tier. Personally, I think Terra box is a better deck, but Dragapult is a stronger overall deck in terms of plays and power level. Or Terra box is a better power level deck, but Dragapult's a stronger deck with more plays is what I meant to say. Next up is Pulsar C tier. I actually really like Pulsar. I have played the deck a bit, and I have actually really enjoyed it. My issue with the deck is it's kind of all over the place with what it's trying to do. But I think Pulsar is C tier. I like it. I think it's a cool deck. I kind of want to put it in B tier, but it's just I can't put it in B tier quite yet because it doesn't have the greatest matchup into Gholdengo. Your Archaladon matchup ain't great. Raging Bolt's a good matchup, but your Terra box matchup is kind of 50-50 too. It's a pretty cool deck, though. I like it a lot. I'm a big fan of the deck personally. Probably going to have a YouTube video on it very soon, if not already. So I think for now I'll put it in C tier. Overall, its power level is a little bit weaker than the other Dragapult decks because it doesn't have the Dusknors and the Budews, unless you build your deck like that. I've been playing with Pidgeot, personally, but yeah. Next up is Pulthorns. Sneakily a really underrated deck right now. I kind of wish I had an underrated deck category because I'd probably put Dragapult and I put both builds of Dragapult in the underrated deck category. If there was an underrated deck category, I would probably put Pulthorns and Dragazard in those two categories. Pulthorns is a deck that I feel like is a little underexplored right now. the way it can be built can actually be very good against a lot of the top decks. Like, you can play Toadscruel if you want to have a good matchup versus Gholdengo. You can play Monkey Dory if you want to have a better matchup into Dragapult itself. Iron Thorns is a pretty disgusting card. I've seen the deck play Feraligatr 2, which is really good against Terrabox and Raging Bolt. So I think Bolt Thorns is a very underrated deck right now. I'm going to put it in C tier just because it hasn't really shown that it's an actual like top competitive deck or anything like that. It's not very common in online tournaments, but it is a deck that I actually wouldn't be surprised if it did well in Atlanta. I'm going to put it in C tier. It's an underrated deck. Next up is Hops Zacian. This is like the Hops Zacian spread deck, I guess. I'll put it also in C tier. I don't think the deck is like unplayable or anything. But I think that the deck is a little polarizing. It has a weird matchup spread, which is the issue. Like, it's not very good into Archaladon or Gholdengo. I don't even know if you're beating Terrabox and Dragapult consistently. The deck is cool, though. It's got a lot of really cool plays. It might just be better for the latter than actual competitive tournament play. Like, if you're trying to make top 8 or win Atlanta, I don't think Hops Zacian spread is the way to go. But, yeah, it's a cool deck. C tier. Feraligatr. This one wavers between B and C. I'll put in B tier for now. I think that if you're going to play a single prize deck this weekend, I think the best one to play is Feraligatr. It is a very tough deck to pilot, though, and it really does depend on how many switching cards are being played right now, which I think is kind of what gauges how good Feraligatr ultimately is in this format. If, the meta, we see decks playing multiple switch, I would say pass on Feraligatr, but it's still a really powerful archetype with a lot of skill expression. It's a hard deck to pilot. I just did a video on it, and, it was pretty good, but it is hard to play, which is an issue. But, yeah, Feraligatr's cool. I think B tier, low B tier is probably where I'd put it. Maybe even if we had an underrated deck category, I'd slide it in that. Next up is Walls. This one's kind of weird, man. Walls hasn't performed very well in online tournaments, and part of this tier list is what we've been seeing in the online tournament scene. Though I do think Walls is a deck that, if your deck doesn't respect it, it's an easy dub. And it's one of those decks like Snorlax. It'll probably fluctuate between play because it really depends on how much people respect the Walls. For now, I'm going to place it in B tier because I think it is one of the better. I think it is still a good deck right now. Like, you can you look at it as like a large scope where it's like, okay, there's all these decks being played right now, but they're not respecting the Walls, or if they are respecting it, their respects are very limited. So it's like you can still overrun what decks are using to try to defeat an army of Cornerstones and an army of Mimikyus and stuff. You know what I mean? So there is potential for the deck to shine. I wouldn't be surprised if somebody did well with it this weekend because it's a deck that you can really just hit all the decks that don't respect you. And I do feel like the respect for Walls right now is not there. Like I said, it hasn't really been performing well in online tournaments, which is a good thing for the deck. I'll put in B tier. Next up is Iono's Bellibolt. I really want this deck to be good. We haven't seen it perform well. I hate to do it, man. I got to put in D tier. I think Iono is a really fun archetype. We just haven't seen the deck do anything yet, and I think that's an issue. But you know what? Maybe post-Atlanta, somebody's going to make a really cool Bellibolt deck, and all of a sudden it'll be in the C tier. For now, though, I got to put in D tier. Like, I can't recommend playing Bellibolt to Atlanta, unless you're just going for fun. Next up is Raging Bolt. I think I'd also put that in A tier. Raging Bolt seems very good right now. It is definitely one of the more popular decks in the format, and I think it is one of the top dogs right now. It's probably not as strong as Terrabox and Dragapult overall, but it is a very powerful archetype that I would still put in the A tier status for sure. I don't know if it's best with, like, Owls or not, but for now I think Raging Bolt belongs in A tier. In this meta, it seems really powerful. Yes, it is Raging Bolt. It's easy to beat, technically, and yeah, it technically has bad matchups into, like, Archaladon and Gholdengo and stuff, but it's still a very powerful archetype, and it does have a good Dragapult matchup, which is really good, and your Terrabox matchup isn't too shabby either, depending on how you design your Raging Bolt deck. Next up is Quad Thorns, probably D tier. I mean, the deck's actually really cool right now, and I kind of want to try it out, but I haven't really seen the deck do anything in this meta, so by default, I'm going to put it in D tier. Next up is Mamoswine. I'm going to put that in D tier too. Look, again, like Iono's Bellibolt, the deck is really cool, and there's many ways you can build a Mamoswine deck, but it's another deck where I'm just like, why would you play this over playing a better deck for Atlanta? You know what I mean? If you're going to Atlanta Regionals, you're trying to make day 2, you're trying to make money, unless you're trying to prove a point, I don't think Mamoswine is a good deck. So for now, it's going to be in D tier. It's not a bad deck. Like, I think every deck on this tier list reasonably is good, and you can definitely win a lot of games with it. Bringing it to a Regionals, though, where there's a lot on the line, we're going to a fresh format, I don't know if I can advise playing the decks in D tier to that tournament. Miraidon, I think is C tier. I actually really like Miraidon right now. I've been playing a bit of it. I think there might be a YouTube video on it, either by now or not on the channel. But I really like Miraidon, but it's another deck where we haven't really seen it pop off yet. You know what? While we're on the topic of Miraidon, though, I'm going to place it in the category with the Iron Hands Future deck. It's another deck that kind of got a bit of hype going into this new format, but hasn't really taken off yet. So for now, I'm going to put both Miraidon and Iron Hands in C tier. They're very similar decks. They're just trying to abuse Iron Hands. Miraidon does have the flexibility of Miraidon, EX, and also I really like the idea of playing it with Pikachu and Crystal. You can actually attack with Pikachu EX. I actually like the idea of using Miraidon as an attacking Pikachu deck. So for now, I'll put Miraidon in C tier and Future Hands. They're decent decks, and much like Froslass or Flareon, wouldn't be surprising if somebody did well with it, but I don't think it's popular enough, and I don't think enough people are really looking into it. And it also hasn't really had the online tournament results yet to back it up. And Zoroark, I would probably place in C tier. This is another deck where we haven't really figured out the best way to build it and play, and I think that is what holds End's Zoroark EX back. I don't think the deck is bad. I think the deck definitely could be in B tier in a different world. It's too early to tell how good this deck is, and we haven't seen an optimal list yet. We haven't seen anybody perform well with it yet. It's too early to tell how good End's Zoroark is, so for now, I'm going to place it in C tier. The deck is better than the other D tier decks, so I can't put it in D tier, but I think that the deck is just fine for now, and I think we have to wait and see. If somebody cracks the deck, we'll see if it's better than C tier. Next up is Charizard. I think Pidgeot Charizard is C tier, but I think Terapagos Charizard is B tier. The nice thing with Charizard is it has a great matchup spread. It's kind of like Gholdengo. You kind of just farm all these other decks. Like, you're really getting into Guardy, Archaladon, Raging Bolt, stuff like that. Like, all the other C tier decks aren't terrible matchups. But then you kind of get into this like weird thing where it's like Terrabox is 50-50 in my opinion if you don't tech for it. And the Dragapult is obviously your worst matchup right now. Though, if you're going to play Charizard, I think you have to play Maximum Belt as the ace spec, whether you're playing it with the Pidgeot and the Dusknoirs or with the Noctowl engine. I think you have to use Max Belt. Max Belt is the best ace spec right now versus Archaladon. Also really good against Gholdengo, and also the only real chance you have of beating Dragapult, which is still a tough matchup. The Max Belt gives you a slight edge, but not by much. I think Dragapult is just a bad matchup for the deck, like, no matter what you do. But Charizard is a definite B-tier deck, in my opinion. You just have to dodge Dragapult. If you want to play a deck that can beat a lot of decks right now, and 50-50 Terrabox, I actually would recommend Charizard. But you have to dodge Dragapult. That's the problem. Dragapult is a bad matchup. So, but I think if you're going to play Charizard, I think the Terapagos build is probably the best way to play it. But, yeah. Next up, we have Slowking. Probably C tier. It's like Froslass. I wouldn't be surprised if somebody made day 2 of the deck. Like, if you want to play a deck like Slowking, play it now. Like Froslass. If you want to play a deck like Froslass, play it now. Slowking, though, I think it's just worse for Feraligatr. Like, just play Feraligatr if you're gonna play like a one prize style deck. Ceruledge is weird. It has been doing decent in online tournaments. I think it won one. Okay, I'll put in like low C tier for now. It's not a bad archetype by any means, but I don't think it's very good compared to like other beat stick decks. It's probably worse Gholdengo. So I would probably say Ceruledge is like low C tier. I know it's been seen a bit of play in online tournaments. I think it won one, but I wouldn't really be like, oh, I'm going to play Ceruledge to Atlanta. It's not really the most like insane deck ever. Also, I don't think you beat Terrabox. It's basically just like Gholdengo, but maybe worse. Maybe. But it maybe has a better Pult matchup than Gholdengo, but Gholdengo already is okay in a Pult anyways. I don't know, like probably C tier. Finally, we have the Tank Terapagos deck. I'm going to slap that in B tier. Maybe sandwich it between Gholdengo and Archaladon. Tank Terapagos does one thing really well. It beats Terrabox, arguably the best out of any deck in the format, other than maybe Archaladon. This deck farms Terrabox, which is really good. So if you want to play a deck that beats Terrabox, I definitely recommend trying out this Terapagos Monkey Dory Cornerstone Noctowl deck. It actually seems pretty darn good. The hype the deck has received so far has been very positive. This deck is looking pretty promising going into the Atlanta Regionals. It's probably, actually, I think it is really the only new archetype other than Poison Bridge I added to the tier list from the last tier list video I did a couple weeks back. So I like the Tank Terapagos deck. I think it's cool. I think there's potential for the deck for sure. I'm going to place it in B tier for being an interesting archetype that beats Terrabox. And yeah, like I said, outside of maybe Walls, it probably beats Terrabox the best out of any deck on this tier list. So for now, I'm going to place it in high B tier. I think it's a good deck. I think it's overall a worse play than Archaladon because it's harder to pilot. So if you're somebody who hasn't picked up the deck and practiced it, I would not recommend playing it. But if you're somebody who has already played the deck enough and knows the matchups, I would recommend playing it. Or if you buy someone's Metafy class, the point is, it's a harder deck to play than the Archaladon deck. Archaladon is just overall, I think Archaladon is a stronger deck right now, but I think the Tropicos deck is really cool. And like I said, it has a decent time into Terra Box. But there you go, folks. That is my Atlanta Regionals tier list. There might have been a few decks I missed. I maybe could have put Roaring Moon on here, but if I put Roaring Moon on here, I would put it in C tier anyways. The Roaring Moon Poison deck that's been popping up, I'd probably place it in C tier. But yeah, that's my tier list for Atlanta. Let me know what you think of it down below in the comment section. Again, stuff like Zoroark, Flareon, maybe even Miraidon and Hobzation. Those are decks that I can definitely see going into B tier post-Atlanta. Again, we'll see where the meta is after Atlanta Regionals. There are decks in the C tier that I really think could be in B tier if somebody makes a good list for it and does well enough or shows the real potential of this deck at Atlanta. But I hope you enjoyed. Once again, if you're new to the channel, subscribe down below. We're on the road to 23K subs. I'll leave a link to the tier list down below if you want to go try for yourself. I'll catch y'all very soon for more content. Bye-bye.